Good evening, and welcome to the second of a series of 3 roundtable discussions with nonprofit organizations in the Valley focusing on issues that are timely and important for all of us, and mostly aggravated by things to do with the pandemic in the last year. I want to thank all of you for coming and for the co-hosts of tonight, which are the Argyros. We're in the lovely Tierney Theater tonight with them, and Dark to Light Productions, who is helping us make look so professional and doing all the camera work this evening. I am Sally Gillespie, and I'm the Executive Director of Spur Community Foundation. For those of you who don't know us, we are a local community foundation that works to inspire effective philanthropy in the Valley. And we work with donors to support their giving, help them find their fit with the causes that interest them, and we help nonprofits with their ability to succeed at their missions through coaching and also direct granting. The concept for these roundtables is really to give our community a chance to hear about the issues outside of a context of fundraising or a context of marketing by the individual organizations who work in them. We have gathered a handful of representatives from that sector, nonprofits who work in the area of tonight's topic, which is education. And you are able to ask questions by typing them into the chat box to the side of your screen, and we will address those at the end of the evening. Before we begin on the topic, though, I want to make sure that everybody recognizes that there is a whole ecosystem of organizations that are involved in this issue of educating and caring for our kids, both in school and outside of school. And we would be remiss in not mentioning the focal point of a lot of that activity is the schools themselves and the teachers who are very dedicated and doing an incredible job to support our kids. There's social workers in the schools and many other organizations like our libraries or the Lee Pesky Learning Center that are very dedicated to supporting our kids. So we have a group here that will be talking about the issues. I think you'll find that it's a group that collaborates with many of those others as well. And parents, of course, are essential to our kids' well-being. So we won't be able to involve them in tonight's discussion, but we honor what you do to help our kids. Let's let the panelists introduce themselves. If you would please give us your name, your organization's name, and how you serve the children in our Valley. Beginning here.
Hi, I'm Tamar Dolgen. I am here representing the Space Idaho. We are a new local organization dedicated to closing the equity gap in education through high-dose, high-quality academic tutoring and college counseling.
Great. I'm Jason Shearer, CEO of the Wood River Community YMCA, and we run programs like Summer School or our Bonnie's Garden STEM program, after-school educational support and care, and other educational interventions, as well as other community programs.
My name's Laura Rose Lewis. I'm with the I Have a Dream Foundation, and the 3 hallmarks of our programs are first is the long-term approach we take to supporting the youth we serve, and we follow them for 12 to 16 years through early elementary, through post-secondary education. The second is the depth and breadth of services we provide those kids throughout those years. So we take a holistic approach to serving kids in academia, social, emotional learning, life skills, and enrichment programming. And we deliver those services in a range of ways. And then finally, our year-round support that we provide. So we not only work through the academic year, but through summers, evenings, and weekend programming. And so we try to, what we want to be and what we are is a constant presence in our kids' lives and really become an integral part of the fabric of their lives.
Thank you.
I'm Mark Davidson. I'm the Executive Director for Blaine County Recreation District, and we serve our county's youth through a whole host of programming ranging from sporting activities. Right now we're running a basketball camp, all the way to after-school programming, very similar to what the Y does. We have a summer camp, and we have programming that runs throughout the course of the year, and we try to address our youth and support our youth through a holistic approach, offering a whole range of activities and support from our staff, and anything we can do to keep our youth happy.
Great. Christy.
I'm Christy Heitzman. I'm the Executive Director of the Blaine County Education Foundation. We support students in all 8 public schools. We do this through Students in Need, which is a program that supports students that have financial barriers to ensure that they can participate regardless of those barriers. We have Education Enhancement Program, which provides extra support classes to students in all of the schools. And then we also have Innovating Ideas, which are extra grants to provide enrichment materials to engage student learning.
Great. And just for a point of clarification, you're the Blaine County Education Foundation, but you are a separate entity from the school district, is that correct?
Correct.
As are you, separate from the county. So the scope of the landscape for children in our community is about 4,000 kids total. We know from enrollment in the district that there's about 3,100 children enrolled there. Private schools service about another 700 to 800 kids, and then there's some homeschooling. So it's close to 4,000. And the student population that we're talking about is from Cary through Peekaboo and Bellevue on up to Ketchum and Sun Valley. And those, I think, are all relevant to the organizations here that are serving. I think we had statistics that are no longer accurate around the number of kids in our district that are eligible for what is called free or reduced meals because of their family's financial situation, and that number has been as high as 42% of children in our district. Lately, the data has not been accurately reported, I think mostly because families are hesitant to enroll in that program, at least they have it in recent years, because they're federal programs and they're just wondering where that data is going to land if there's anybody in their family whose status is questionable. And the percentage of students in our district that are of a minority status has grown in recent years. And so as we talk about the issues tonight, I think there'll be an opportunity for our audience to learn a little bit about the student population as well. But let's dig in onto the questions here. We have a number to ask, and you all serve a little bit different tiers of age groups and things, and so perhaps you can address them accordingly. My first question is, from your vantage point, how are our kids doing? And let's begin with elementary aged kids. Those of you who serve elementary could speak first.
I'll start. I'll say I think it's been a very difficult year for elementary age students. They missed school in the spring. They had 2-day-a-week programming for most of this year, and pretty significant social isolation. And I think it's important at this point in the conversation to say that students who don't read at grade level by the end of 3rd grade, and certainly by the end of elementary school, really struggle to graduate from high school. And for that reason, all of their social emotional well-being and their access to education to meet that benchmark are critical to their whole lifelong health.
I'm going to just jump in there. We're going to start working with elementary kids. Right now we're serving kids in the high school. We're going to start working with elementary kids of Argyros and Bellevue this fall. And so in meeting with the principals of those schools, we have, and we're meeting with the teachers and developing our programming around the needs and what's been going on. And there has been great challenges, particularly for elementary kids, with online learning and the isolation, as Jason mentioned. And some families have actually withdrawn their kids, maybe permanently, and the schools are working to try to re-enroll those kids. So that's a new challenge that the schools are facing and the families are facing, and we think the kids are facing because we want them to return.
I've heard anecdotes, it seems obvious when you think about it, about online work for children who are that young, not even be able to follow the instructions
Right.
to be connected to class, or does anybody have any familiarity with what those experiences have been like for kids?
I can add a little. For students, imagine a 1st grader, and if one parent or both parents work, and then there's a relative or a sibling that might be helping those children to stay on task throughout the day, like, okay, now we need to switch to science, and now we need to switch to math, and now we need to, it's very daunting, and there's a lot of home distractions, and it's easy to get on and play a video game or whatnot. So it's been very difficult for some of those students to stay on task on their off days at home. Mm-hmm. But then some of our special needs students have had the opportunity to go to school 4 days a week, those elementary students. So they've gotten used to a smaller group setting and that more one-on-one, and some of them have actually thrived. But that is a small sector of those students. Majority of our elementary students are definitely struggling, and math seems to be the hardest, overall.
Right.
So, but now that students are back in school 4 days a week, we're seeing a little bit of an uptick.
Good.
So that's encouraging.
What about middle schoolers?
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
On the elementary level? A little bit different perspective perhaps, but something I have observed. I mentioned youth basketball in my intro for a reason. It's given me personally a chance to talk to kids and ask them how are things going. And I can think of like Carla or Daniela or Yaritzi or Alex, and these kids, they have said to me literally, I don't see my friends because they're in separate pods. So I think that, I mean, I don't know all of the statistics necessarily around education, like how they're reading and these kinds of things, but what I observe from just a personal standpoint is that it's tough. Just like it's tough for us, these kids are experiencing it in a very different way and in a very critical moment in their life. And that has really hit home for me, the struggle of what we're going through.
Thank you, Mark.
Definitely.
And I just want to add to that, I do think elementary students, I think all students are vulnerable, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it. I think they're particularly vulnerable. This school year, we ran school on the days kids couldn't attend school for elementary age students. And that was, we saw students who could not read the instructions on their Chromebook to navigate to the homework that they needed to complete. Or even in our nice facility with great infrastructure for Wi-Fi, as soon as a wheel of death started to spin, the whole class starts to spin out of control. So imagine you're at home, your parent is an English language learner, working multiple jobs. You really are up against a big challenge at a formative year.
Yeah, it's tough. Anything different for middle schoolers?
So at the space, we work with middle and high school students, and our experience with the middle school students is that, especially the 6th and 7th graders, so when you think about like the age, they're still they're young. 6th and 7th graders can be 10, 11, 12 years old. So the younger ones are having trouble focusing and really logging in and getting their work done. And that's a big challenge. The 8th graders, I think, are a little more independent and maybe more technically advanced, so they can handle it a bit better, but they don't have the desire and the motivation necessarily to stay plugged in on their days off. So I think it's especially hard, and some of us have already talked about this, in terms of the students and families where the parents are working is a big struggle, because they don't have somebody kind of supervising them to make sure they're on when they need to. These middle schoolers don't necessarily have the executive functioning skills to kind of be responsible for it. And if their parents aren't home to look over them, it's a big challenge. And then, of course, also the students whose parents are, English as a second language, they don't have the ability to, let's say, help their children with the work that they're doing, because by middle school, the work gets more complicated and advanced, and they just don't have that support at home.
No. What about our high schoolers?
So I think there's been a mixed experience in high school. I think COVID has been, of course, introduced additional challenges, the online learning, the transition to online learning. There's the social emotional piece, there's isolation and anxiety around that, anxiety around returning. Now they're back 4 days a week. So discomfort with being isolated, then discomfort with reconnecting. And kids that took on jobs part-time while they were in part-time school. And we also held a space where we tried to create an environment where kids could pretend they were in school every day. And we called it study hall when they were part-time online, but many of them were really enjoying the opportunity to get a paycheck. And so that transition back has been really challenging as well. And others are very excited to be back. We had some kids that were kind of hiding out in our office, some of the Dream Scholars, because they were fearful of going into the cafeteria because of COVID still. So I think there's such a mixed experience right now.
And that's just 2 days old, right? We've just over third day today with this returning to more like normal schedule.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
4 days a week.
I was going to say too that like Silver Creek High School is a smaller school, and they really flourished kind of during the hybrid learning. They really got close and intimate with their instructors. I mean, just that smaller class setting, they were able to really do well. And then now you have all this extra kids, and that's not a very large school, added into their routine. And I know at the middle school, a social worker also acknowledged that 2 weeks before students went back 4 days a week, they had an uptick in students coming into their offices and just out of anxiety and a few behavioral issues, nothing severe, but just an uptick from anxiety and kids being anxious about intermixing with one another again.
Yeah.
And I'll add that preliminary data is suggesting in the high school that there's going to be a higher number of kids that are going to need to recover credits this summer. We're partnering with the high school to do a credit recovery program, and I know many of these organizations are also supporting kids through the summer. I think that's going to be really important. We don't know yet how it is going to match up exactly with the data from last year. I think we are seeing a consistency in the education opportunity gap among under-resourced kids. So that's kind of a consistent through line, but it does appear that there is an uptick in or an increase in loss of credits because of the COVID.
And then just quickly touching on college, I've heard some stories that make me sad to think of kids that were supported to achieve and be able to attain college. And then what's happening with those folks, to your knowledge?
I can talk a little bit about that. I mean, we've been following the national data, and unfortunately, it's not very positive. The FAFSA financial aid applications that were submitted this year are down 10%. So that's a huge decline, and that is for the students that need the most need. So we were talking earlier about the opportunity, the education gap, inequality, and it's made things worse, unfortunately. These are issues that we've faced before, but with the pandemic, it's just kind of widened it and exacerbated it. So I think that's something we haven't seen the numbers yet in our community, but I can imagine they'll be similar to what's happening nationally, which means that there'll be less students going on to college, and those are going to be the most under-resourced students in our community.
I think there's a social emotional component too that we don't want to miss. I mean, students who got a job, who are a high school age student who got a job during the pandemic, they may have gotten a very interesting education in politics and history and medicine and a number of things. But in some ways, think about the kids who did not get a job or who did not engage well or who lived with vulnerable family members or who had fewer opportunities. And whatever you think our social need is, magnify that by 1,000,000, and you're getting close to the social need for basic mental health and well-being of an adolescent. And I want to sort of just tag on the sort of forgotten group in all of this, which is the teacher, who has, whether you think schools should be open all the time or not, it's a great debate. But teachers have been teaching in person constantly through the process and teaching online simultaneously. So they have worked harder than ever before, including having to adapt. And when a high school or middle school student falls behind or needs additional assistance, they're talking now to teachers who are working harder than any teacher should have to work. So it's a really complicated problem as we think about the mental well-being, the social well-being, and the academic success of all of these age groups.
Can I dovetail into that?
Yes, please.
So this, again, like another observation that I've seen, and I'm partly putting it in my own context growing up, thinking about what it would have been like for me going through something like this. And something that you said, Jason, made me think about, we're in orange right now on the scale. So like things are a little bit looser. We're allowing kids to play in the gym at the BCRD. And I saw a 3-on-3 game. Like that alone, like to me when I was growing up, was super important. And I see kids wanting to play sports, games, whatever it might be, and how that contributes to like when you're in college. Like how many of us when we were in college couldn't wait to just stop studying and go like to the rec center and do something that was completely different, that made your mind think differently, and then you could come back to your problems and it was easier to solve. So that, like just seeing that, it has been literally almost a year since we saw that kind of activity. And this is like not very much, mind you. This was 6 kids. It's like, that alone was like, wow, it kind of blew my mind. Like I was like, what am I watching? we're not so, are we, is this okay? But it was like just to see them want to do it.
Right.
And like what that might mean for their own mental well-being, and then like to offer that to more and more kids is like, I think, imperative right now.
Yeah, so if your kid goes off to college, if they're lucky enough to go off to college, they may spend 20 hours a day in their dorm room and go to live classes in a mask. If they're in high school, you know, they may have been attending classes 2 days a week, fall behind, get in trouble, teachers working hard. If they were going to go to college and didn't get the chance to go to college, now they've got a job and they've got to choose between that job and trying to re-enter the education program of their choice. And you look back again at elementary school, and if you miss that metric for learning to read so that you can read to learn in middle school and high school, you know, we're looking at a pretty long haul to try to help kids succeed.
Yes.
Well, and it's not just about school, right? You're bringing this up, Mark. Childcare, all of the other hours of the day for children have been disrupted, and if there's anything we can say about, you know, what has been offered, what has been available to kids and to families outside of what they've been scheduled to do with school.
Fall sports, I mean, as we know, a lot of them, girls basketball didn't happen. My daughter was devastated. But then by winter, we started to kind of figure it out and figure out a way to once again add in some of those extracurricular. But a lot of the academic clubs are unable to travel and go to Anaheim, which is kind of the yearly something choir always looks forward to. They're unable to go and actually compete. So, and I know some students last year were really looking forward to that as their senior year and were unable to compete. And so some of those things have definitely adjusted. They're able to compete, but they're doing it Zoom. And so there's something entirely different than being in a building with all kids from all over and doing these competitions for robotics and that has all altered a little bit this year. And I know that's been really hard for our students because that's a passion and that's something that drives them and maybe helps them with career choices and wanting to continue their education and inspiring them. So that's kind of devastating.
Well, as we've been talking and preparing for this, something that struck me about all of you and listening to everybody talk was the difficulty that nonprofit organizations that are trying to serve our community's youth were put in when the school district shut down. It's like all of a sudden, all of us became the safety net in a way. And no matter what perspective you're coming at it from, you're trying to figure out like, well, the school district's not running, so can we operate? But yet you feel this need to operate and offer those services. And that's what has struck me in listening to you all talk about what you've faced in trying to deal with this.
I'd love to jump in there and a couple responses. I think what's the beauty of what's come out of that, at the risk of sounding Pollyanna-ish, is that there has been a lot of collaboration. I think we reached out to one another. We genuinely were looking to see who's offering what and who we can refer to what services that we didn't provide, and really work together on joint programming. And the community's really rallied around and supported all of us. I feel that we've all been really well supported by our community to enhance programs and expand programs and really work in partnership with the district, who did a lot to support the transition and ensuring with Cox Communications, ensuring everyone had the internet. And anyway, I really feel like it was an amazing opportunity. I wanted to also respond, Sally, if it's okay, just really quickly to your other two points. One of your questions was around the child care issue. That was another complexity. So a lot of our high school kids, families needed them when they were home trying to learn online. They needed to take care of their siblings as well who were home from elementary school or middle school. And that was a daunting responsibility for our kids. And they're used to having to do that after school, but not while they're trying to get their homework done as well. So that was a challenge. And in terms of the college process, sorry, I'll be quick here, but we're experiencing just what you referred to, Christy, and looking for, so our kids are now just applying to college and going through the college prep process, looking for summer opportunities that will strengthen their application. It's all online. Then the flip side is a lot of schools have gone to, as you know, test optional. So that's maybe a benefit to under-resourced kids. Sometimes there's a performance gap, and because they don't get some of the same support that higher resource kids do get in preparing for those tests. So again, it's an incredibly complex web of responses and experiences that we're all having and needing to be responsive to in our organizations, and our families have to respond to.
Really well said. I wanted to tack on, though, that I think there's a natural relationship that exists between all of us and between the school district. We have an exceptional school district. Don't doubt it. We're lucky. But that school district works for a majority of kids, but many can fall through the cracks, and that's where we fit in. And so, yeah, this pandemic year has been really hard on all of us, and I'm sure none of us have gotten the sleep we wish we had. And there have been some stress as we push chips out onto the table. But you know, I'm also really proud of that work, and I think it opens new avenues for us. I was really proud when we were one of the first programs to be able to operate inside a school building. And I think opening the Power Schools program as a smaller program that it had been in previous years gave members of the school community some faith that they could see how they might operate in another way. And I think we all do that in different ways. We all plug in, and we are that finer filter that sits behind the school. But we are partners with the school, all of us, and that's how it works.
There have been numerous conversations, deliberate conversations, where we've gotten people touching these subject matters on the same calls to talk about what they're doing. And I think, you know, if we're talking about silver linings and things that'll stick, I'm most encouraged to think that the nonprofit sector has that kind of dialogue and relationship peer-to-peer that will strengthen all the opportunities. Couple questions. First, I want to remind our audience that you can go and make comments on your YouTube or Facebook Live feed, and those will feed into me where we can ask your questions if you have any for our panelists. So we're going to head into summer before long here. I mean, it feels like tomorrow already, and I'm curious to know if what can people expect? What are you most looking forward to that might be shifting? We have a bit of a reprieve coming with vaccinations and other things. So what's summer going to look like for our kids, and what's needed to support them in the summer? Mark, why don't you start?
Well, I'm optimistic by nature, I think, or I'd say that to myself. And listening to my staff talk about what's coming in the summer and the optimism and how they are thinking about the program, the hard work that they put into it. For example, Kelly Blondell, who runs our summer camp program, as I was learning about how we were thinking about the summer, the way he put it to me was, you know, last year was so difficult. It was so new. You know, we went from March to summer and everybody was adjusting. You all lived through it. I didn't. At the time, I wasn't working for BCRD yet, so I'm relatively new to this. And so I was getting this story from Kelly and Jenna, our director of programs and recreation, about like how did this all work for us. And to go from what happened last summer to where we are right now, the optimism and the returning camp counselors that we have coming back, it's like the feeling is that we're going to actually be able to deliver something that is, I hate to use the word normal because I'm not even sure what normal means anymore, but something that feels, I kind of experience it as being more open, that it's a little bit lighter in all the midst of...
Is that right?
The pool will be open.
Yeah, things like that, basic things.
So that all makes me feel like, you know, and we're just one sampling. The Y obviously has their programming and everybody's kind of experiencing this, but I just felt a little bit lighter about the whole thing.
Who else wants to add to the vision for summer and supporting our kids?
Well,
We probably all do. Go for it.
I'll add. You know, the Y has for a long time offered a Power Scholars summer education program, which is a summer school program in Bellevue, at the Bellevue School. And this year we're joining with some other key partners. The Blaine County School District is going to be helping us, and we're going to engage the College of Idaho is going to send us 20 interns. And Teach for America is trying to send us 4 additional academic teachers, and the community school is going to house this army of wonderful people, and we're going to back away from our traditional summer camp program and roll our staff in there and add staff, and we're going to offer summer school at Bellevue Elementary, Alturas School, and then we'll have a STEM program with literacy in our Bonnie's Garden at the main Y campus. And really, you know, it's scary, it's hard, it has me nervous, but it's also going to result in some long-lasting benefits in the key partnerships with the College of Idaho. It will have us forming a relationship with Teach for America, and it will leave us with non-consumable curriculum that we can later implement in our after-school programming and other partnerships we hope for.
That's super impressive and exciting. Sounds like a summer ahead for you guys. We're partnering with the Wood River High School to deliver a summer seminar again in the month of June, depending on how many kids there are. So we support that, design that, and execute it with them, not just for Dream Scholars, but for any Dream Scholars that need that, but also for the larger student body of kids that need to recover credits. Depending on how the numbers turn out and what the need is, if we have to expand that beyond just the month of June, it's a very intensive summer seminar, then we'll expand it. And then our kids will be engaged in intensively college prep work. So that's a huge push for them this summer. We're hoping to deliver engage them in some summer program, outdoor programming, but we feel that the college prep is going to be huge, and they all work. Most of them work. So that's going to be the bulk of our summer work, and then of course us launching our elementary program in August. So that's our work this summer.
And Tamar, do you, the space function?
Yeah, I mean, we offer more individualized programming, so we do small group or one-on-one tutoring, academic tutoring. So with this summer being different than other summers where, other summers I think kids have been more focused on just fun and not as much academics or summer school. But this summer we plan to be able to offer the additional support that these students need that will be going in the middle school and high school if they're going to be in summer school, for those students that need additional support to get them through those courses. And that's what we specialize in, really high dose, high quality, small group tutoring. And also, we're already thinking ahead to the next school year. So having the end of the summer and the end of the school and the end of the summer to have the students being well prepared to start what will hopefully be a full year of in-person school next year.
Great. You have some things going on with the district too.
Well, yes, but I don't have to worry about the summer. Thankfully, Jason and everybody else is taking care of that. So we're looking ahead into the next year. So we're planning more academic support after school. We'd like to offer 10 different programs at the 8 schools, and then 2 additional at Cary School for secondary students and elementary, and then at Hemingway STEAM School for the elementary and secondary students. We would the district would bill us, and we would pay for paraprofessionals and teachers, up to 4 of them, to support the students, and we'd like to do about 25 students after school or before school, because Cary is more of an agricultural community, so it might make more sense for them to attend before school. The key in this is to be flexible, and since testing will happen, ISAT tests will happen at the end of the school year and in the fall, that's when we'll be able to be flexible and find out what we really need. So we're just kind of on our toes, so to speak.
I'm aware too, because of grants Spur has made, that you have a tutoring fund of sorts. Maybe you could share how that might intersect with.
Yes, so currently at the beginning of the school year, knowing with COVID and part-time hybrid learning that there was going to be some needs, but didn't know how to move forward with that just because it's hybrid, but students really, in person would be ideal. Mm-hmm. We were able to outsource tutoring, and so we work with the space. We've communicated with I Have a Dream Foundation, but we pay outside tutors to work with students, so teachers will recommend them, and so to the social workers were the ones, and all of our tutors have background checks and are approved by school district, and then the families would arrange with the tutors of the time and when we would pay up to $50 an hour for our tutors, and each student family is given a $500 scholarship. So, and of those students, we have about 54 that had signed up for it that were qualified. Just over 40 of them are participating in that program, and all of those students are showing progress. Quite a few of them are coming to the end of their $500 cap and trying to find ways to continue that support. So it's going well.
This is the kind of ecosystem that I think
Yes.
it's important for our audience to realize is, private tutoring seems costly, but it's becoming available in new ways because of the partnerships that are forming.
Can I just add on to that? Just
Yeah.
something that we've been working on that we're really excited about, which is that we're going to be able to do a after-school middle school program. We've been working really closely with the Wood River Middle School, and we're going to be able to get our tutors on campus after school twice a week, starting after spring break, I think is when it's going to begin. And what's great about that is that it just takes away a lot of the planning that's needed for coordination. That might be a barrier for families to get to tutoring. We'll be there. The kids will just be able to walk down the hallway, and we will be able to have one-on-one or small group tutoring for the kids that need it. And then we're also and that's being done together with the school district and with Christy and her organization, as well as partnership with Idaho Base Camp, so that there's not just the academic side, but the whole student, and talking about how kids need to also relax. So they're going to be doing outdoor education with Idaho Base Camp, which is what you were saying, Mark, about it's so important for the kids to just relax, right? And there's a lot of anxiety, and so hopefully that will help relieve some of it.
Child's support. So yes, and it's based off of a program that we've done in the past for after-school support, but knowing that some of the kids had a difficult time getting to the tutors, that's where we brought in the space. And then needing that whole child component, so IBC, and allowing students to get out of the school and be active and get away from screens for a little bit is really impertinent.
That reminds me of a program that has gotten some attention in the past, which is the partnership between the community library and the Hunger Coalition with their Bloom truck that goes in different communities and brings enriching activities. I think a number of other organizations involve that too, but I'm aware that the community library gave out 2,500 books last year to young early readers and are focusing on that kind of thing. So we've got the school year, but we have a really rich and robust, I think, suite of partners to work on these issues throughout the year.
I don't think people always know how much collaboration there really is. I mean, I think Hunger Coalition probably feeds all of our kids, or the school district does, or some combination thereof. And I can think of at least 3 partnerships in the hopper with people in this group. So I think we are all in it together, and I just want people to walk away knowing that.
So the question would be, do we have the bases covered? What is the collective service capacity of what we've been talking about relative to what our kids might need in the Valley?
Here's a really quick answer to that. It's probably going to be, these guys can all correct it. My initial observation is probably don't have enough. Like we're hearing right now, summer camps are filling up like the moment they open.
Right.
Like that's kind of tells you, like you look at the housing market, you can't find a house.
Right.
Not enough houses, just like there's not enough space for summer camp.
Right.
So like these things that's my initial gut reaction to what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was, in hearing everybody, I just was excited and kind of continuing your thought around, and yours, Jason, around wanting the community to see this collaboration. When I hear about all these programs going on, most of which I'm familiar with, some of which were news to me, I think what we want the community to understand is, and because we've been asked about duplication of efforts, is there is so much need out there right now in our community that all of our programs are full. We're all busy and we're all stretching to serve beyond our normal, the normal groups that we serve. And so, and we're doing that collaboratively. And to answer your question, I think there's huge opportunity still. I think in a way we have the bases covered in that I think we're all really dug in to figure out what the needs are and to address them, and we're interested in being creative and expanding what we do. So there's more need. We have to expand our programs, but in terms of what kind of services are delivered, I think our nonprofit community is pretty dialed into what the needs are and trying to be responsive to it.
just in case the camera was zoomed in, I just want to echo that and say I really wholeheartedly agree. Unfortunately, the need, I'm really optimistic and heartened when I hear our group talk, but the need is not meetable today. And it really has long-lasting impacts on our kids and on society. And so the good news is we all work together, we all like each other, we sometimes plug in different places and in different ways and in different age groups. Some do really big programs, some do small intensive programs. It's all of those things in the ecosystem. But donors should feel comfortable that what inspires them is going to make a difference.
Right. Can you elaborate on the consequences of all of this among our youth, on our community at large? Where does someone who perhaps doesn't have kids or beyond the age of raising kids themselves, where does it connect that we have these issues for our children in their lives, in their experience of our community?
Yeah, well, I think everybody probably is aware that the economy has evolved, that there's been a decrease in jobs in natural resource harvestation, manufacturing, agriculture, and a lot of jobs that existed in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even in the 90s, even in the 90s, and maybe 2000, are not as plentiful. And so you have jobs in the STEM field where you really can earn a pretty good living, and you have jobs in the service economy, and some people in there can do pretty well. But without education, without kids who get an education and who have the opportunity to choose for themselves, I have a passion for the service economy and I'm perfectly happy. But it really, at the end of the day, if a person's not able to make choices about their life, they're not going to have the mental health that we want them to have, and they may struggle. And that has some pretty significant societal impacts, not just on the economics of what kind of workforce can we build in our country that's educated, that's really pushing us forward and helping even to maintain the world order, but what happens to a kid who experiences the adverse childhood experience of being scared to raise their hand in school, being mortified that they'll be called on? And what does that do in the trajectory of their whole life when you think about adverse childhood experiences and what we know about the rate of depression or suicide or alcohol and chemical dependency or other challenges that people have, including just a reduced life expectancy? How do all of those things plug into the conversation? And I would argue that education, if we're thinking about the continuum of social services, and we think over here we have food insecurity and houselessness, at the headwaters of every conversation is education, and education that gives every kid, regardless of their economic circumstance or background, the opportunity to reach their full potential, whatever that is.
And absolutely, really well spoken, well said. The kids, I think we all want to support our kids to return to our communities if they do go elsewhere for post-secondary education, or if they do it here, or their high school degrees, and become contributing members to our community, break the cycle of poverty in their families, and be able to reach for their dreams, as you said. In our leadership program, we were fascinated in the interview process as we were admitting kids to hear a lot of them say, I don't see leaders that look like me. I want to become one of those leaders. I want to become a leader in this community and achieve everything that I can be in that capacity. And it was remarkable. I think it said a lot about what our kids' aspirations are when they're given the opportunity to express and explore them.
We're in the process of reading quite a few scholarships, local scholarships that we dole out. And a lot of the essays will talk about students. And a lot of these students who are in economical difficult families or dysfunctional families, they recognize that education is a key to them getting out of that cycle, getting out of that poverty. And so they recognize that they're willing to do what it takes, working the extra jobs to make the money to be able to go to the community college or hopefully get scholarships to be able to go to four-year schools. So yes, numbers are down, but there are quite a few students who recognize that this is the key for them them to make changes in their life. And it's very inspiring. And then locally, I mean, most people will move to an area where we've had an uptick in residents because we have a beautiful valley that offers all this great outdoor recreation, but also we have a good school district, and people know that, and they want to come and they want to bring their kids here, and they want them to have opportunities in Business of America and all the different academic clubs and all the opportunities that our school district does provide, which is a little above and beyond other areas.
Yeah. I just wanted to add to that. We have a student that we're working with who is in community college now and looking. She was at in the Blaine County School District last year and looking to get scholarships to continue her education. And her goal in life, her dream, is to become a police officer. And she is Latina. And when you ask the question about, what does this mean for people who in our community who don't have children or their children are grown, I just think about this girl, this young woman who is a student who is aspiring to be a police officer. So these are our future police officers, these are our future librarians, these are our future doctors, these are our future everything. So this affects the whole, really does, it's the future of the whole community, as you were saying, Jason.
Great. A little bit of a different type of question now. I'm curious what lessons might have been learned or innovations have come about out of necessity that you might want to carry forward in how you work with your constituents, your students or their families. Anybody launch something that they're say, we're going to always do it this way?
We've changed our summer camp in a way that I think it's some of those changes that were made as a result of COVID are going to stick, like how we team people up, kids up, and utilize counselors more effectively. Like that sounds like that's something that was a change that we didn't normally do that worked. That's like an example of what I think will stick. I think there are things that we don't actually know still, because like what's weird about this, like it has only been a year, a lot happens in a year, and I think there's going to be trial and error for the next 6 months to a year. I mean, could take another year for all of it to play out. Like what sticks, what doesn't, it's really hard to say. Yeah. But there are some little things that I've observed that I think will.
What comes up for me is, I think none of us want to revisit this kind of a year, but I think the opportunity, ironically, because none of us wish for online learning, but the opportunities that Zoom and Google Meet and all of those online opportunities to convene when you can't meet in person, provide opportunities to bring in national speakers to our kids. And be able to gather with people that you might not otherwise be able to gather with. To me, that's the thing that really rises to the top. And then the other would be that we can be flexible and transition really quickly to serve kids in a host of different ways, and that those online platforms we were able to teach kids. We were able to meet with them one-on-one and do counseling and small group workshops. So I think that's what comes up for me.
I would agree. For us, online resources for teachers was a huge uptick on people asking and requesting and needing more financial need for some of those resources to be able to teach band online, which, yes, that would be tricky. So, but some of those were actually great tools and will probably be utilized because it'll allow students to be able to practice at home. And so we have discovered some of those online resources. Teachers had to learn new skills, which was challenging at the beginning, but they were able to succeed and do that. And some of those resources have been a great success. Classroom licenses for Shakespeare sets, so students can have access to those books, be it at school, whether they can get to the libraries or not. Now they can get them digital also.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think that there's been a lot of innovation this year, which is, it's forced us to look internally, look externally, look at things differently because we've had no choice, and that can have a lot of positive results and a lot of creation that can come out of that, and I think it has, and I think it will continue to. And when you think about how it affects our children, the children, like they just are learning to think of things differently and have solutions, and this has been a life experience for them. I just think that in terms of on the flip side of it, though, is I think it's also taught us, even with all the technology that has made learning so unique and so accessible even from home, is that connection. The relationship is so important. I think we all feel it today. I mean, we've been all working together for the last 6 to 12 months on Zoom, and we haven't seen each other. I haven't met most of you or any of you in person. So for adults, it's really been important to reconnect. But when you think about, as you were saying, like 1 million times more for an adolescent. So I think that those relationships that students build with their teacher, with their counselors, and the trust that they build and the confidence they build when it's a positive experience is something that it's really hard to replicate on a computer. And so I'm just so anxious for the summer to come, and that kind of levity of being able to be together outside and safer environment to build those connections.
I love your point about the adaptability, though. I mean, it's some of these kids will bring a new skill set, will have learned a new skill in being adaptable and resilient, and it's been very challenging for some, but I think it has really given that opportunity.
I've learned that, if you, in a time of crisis, you can lean into your mission and take a leap of faith into a risk level, a financial risk level that, and that you can survive and do amazing things. At one point, when we were planning to rent the Mint building in Haley and turn it into a school and transform the lower level of the Y, somebody asked me, how are you going to pay for that? And I said, I don't know, but does it really matter? I mean, this is the moment of maximum critical need, and if we didn't build these institutions for this, then what are we doing? Let's go for it. And somehow, not long after, people said, no, I give you permission. Here's the permission slip that you can make that choice. And that all just made it that much easier for us to say, oh yeah, we'll do summer school. Why not? What could go wrong? And obviously it's going to be an amazing program, but trying to take that risk to get staff and people and things all to line up and all the agreements to support it, it's huge. But we can do what we need to do in that moment of crisis. We take that risk.
Yeah. I would think too, I've heard stories of the surprising ownership certainly older children have taken of their situation and their willingness, like you mentioned, kids who want to lead. A community library, I think, is now going to routinely hire interns from our local teen population to perform roles there because of how they contributed in a way that we've maybe ignored our kids in some fashions, and they can be more authors of what it is that will aim their future where they want it to go than we maybe gave them credit for.
Along those lines, like I referenced briefly earlier about our summer camp having, I think it's 100% of those kids coming back to work at summer camp. What an incredible opportunity all of us provide for youth. I mean, like when I moved here a while ago,
20 years.
21 years ago. Good thing I moved here in 2000. I can do that math. To see where what the community looked like then to what it looks like now, and like the amount of people doing things and the energy, and you said you don't want to sound Pollyannish. Well, that's exactly what we should sound like. We work for mission-driven organizations. Like, you're Pollyannish just because you are where you are. And I've just come to own that. I don't even care anymore. It just is what it is. I think that's something that we all offer, are these avenues for young people to work through, whether it's internships or whether it's, you're expanding programs. You're going to have a whole host of new kids coming through. We have our hub kids, the whole crew's coming, or excuse me, the summer school, summer camp. The whole crew's coming back. These are kids that go to high school here. They are in our system, so to speak, and they are seeing themselves. It is a more diverse crowd. I think that it's worth acknowledging that. It does look different. It feels different. I feel it. I mean, maybe others don't, but I certainly feel like we have really come someplace in 20 years. A long ways, actually. And even though it's hard, and the challenge. I love that you lean in. You got to lean in. That's what Pollyannish people do.
So we're nearing the hour. I do have one question, and I have a question I want to ask you guys as a wrap-up, but let's field the question that's come in here. It was about the Shakespeare online thing, and the question is, do you use a public domain content for that, or is there a need for funding and licensing that content?
So I had the request come from the teachers, and they needed a classroom set, so we had to pay for licenses for each of those student sets. So
But once you have them,
I think it's only a yearly, and that's how everybody makes their money. We're learning. So now we get to go through and kind of ask our teachers and principals which ones were relevant and how was the evaluation piece, and kind of going through. I've got a great board, and so I've delegated that to all of them. Now you need to go back and find out which ones will work, so we're not repeating and duplicating and just buying things because one teacher out of 50 said that was a good. So trying to utilize and stretch the dollars.
The answer for the person who might have an interest in that is possibly, but you don't know which ones yet, right?
Exactly.
Which of the news services.
Right.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you for the question. If anybody else has one, please type a question into your chat box or comment box. So here's a question I think that it would be interesting to hear all of you answer. We'll just go left to right here, starting with Tamar, is for the children you serve, what do you wish for them in the next year? What would be a eureka experience for the kids that you serve?
Of course, there's so many wishes, but I'll just pick one, and I think it's confidence, that they have the confidence, that they know they've lived through one of the strangest and most difficult times in modern history, and that they're coming to the other end of it, and it's going to make them stronger, and it's going to make them more innovative, as we were talking about, and that that they have the support of the community, and it's okay to ask for help. Everyone should ask for help. And that's what we're all here for, whether it's their teacher, whether it's their counselor, whether it's one of the organizations, a parent or friend, but we're all here to help each other. I just feel really grateful to be part of this community.
I hope the kids will return to school knowing that even if their intelligence is different from the intelligence of others, that it's valuable, that it's unique, that it's special. I hope they'll walk into school and raise their hand. I hope they'll be able to read at grade level, but if they can't, I hope they know they might be the next Albert Einstein. They could be a genius. And I hope they feel good about themselves, and that's my hope.
I belief in themselves, trust in the adults around them, the community around them, that they can rely on the community to support them, that if and when they work hard, that the combination of the support around them and hard work can allow them to achieve their dreams.
Those are all great answers, and I'm sure Christy will have a great answer. Not to sound flippant, like I think I just have some fun through the whole thing. Like, it's easy to forget when you're, I mean, you get old and you look older, you look back and you're like, man, I wish I would have taken advantage of that time when I was in junior high school. And not, I don't know, there's just so much out there to experience, and I just want kids to come out of this pandemic with all those things and more, and just feel like the world is actually a good place, and to just embrace it.
I was going to say, I wish that they take chances, try new things, and know that there's people around to help support them no matter what. So have fun, take those risks, try new things, try something, play the tuba even though you've never done it. That's what life is about. It's short, and take risks. You never know what might happen.
Well, and your point about the survivability of something that was extreme like this, I would hope too that kids learn that there will be these, this roller coaster ride, and that there's no reason to hit the eject button, right? You stay in there and something good will come. I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. There aren't any other questions at this time, and ask our audience to consider tuning in again next Wednesday, where we'll be talking with the broader range of human services and health organizations in the Valley, obviously just a representative sampling. Thank you very much to the Argyros for hosting us again tonight. And thank you to Dark to Light Productions for making us look good, like with the McNeil era or something. And it's been a pleasure to host this. Thank you all for a great conversation about education in the
Thank you,
Valley.
Sally and the Spur Foundation.